Welcome to the Future of Real Estate. I'm Brett Ellis of the Ellis Team at RE/MAX Realty Group. If you haven't joined us before, you're in for a real treat. On this show, we talk about real estate issues affecting you. With us today is special guest, Lee County Sheriff Mike Scott. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Well, it's always a pleasure to have you here. You're always a wealth of information and also entertaining, and that makes for good radio, TV, and that sort of thing. So there's been a lot of stuff in the news lately. So I've got some questions, only because I don't know. But my problem is I watch these cop shows and whatnot. So anyway, in some of these cop shows, they'll pull over a driver, but then they'll ask for an ID of the passenger. Why do they do that?
Well, in many cases, the passenger could potentially have a warrant for their arrest. That's one way to check. Certainly in this day and age of documented versus undocumented foreign-borns, it's one way to better determine who the person is. A lot depends on the preface for the stop. If it's a let's just say a standard speeding type thing, the passenger may or may not play as much of a role in that as if it were a vehicle suspected of burglaries, let's say, or something. The other nice thing about identifying and separating people in the vehicle is you get different stories. So if I stop a vehicle, the driver tells me, well, I'm down here for a job interview. The passenger says, well, we're down here to visit my aunt. Well, something didn't add up.
Exactly. Well, and that leads me to my next question. So there are reasons sometimes to obviously ask for identification for the driver. You got to know who you're dealing with. There may be reasons to identify passengers in the car because you don't know what they're up to and you may need to know what they're up to. But when we get into this identification of, you mentioned foreign-born citizens or foreign-born, well, they're not citizens necessarily. But why, I don't understand like this Arizona law and some of the Virginia proposals and whatnot. It's like, we need to know who we're dealing with, but why is it all of a sudden politically incorrect to identify whether, if I get pulled over, they want my driver's license. And I don't care what state it's in. I don't care who the sheriff is. They want to know who I am. But it seems like we're not allowed to ask certain people who they might really be. And why is that?
Well, and that's scary. And frankly, nobody is able to give a definitive answer. Why is that? Clearly, I believe, as it sounds like you do, and as many in this country do, that we want to be a country that welcomes others, but to be undocumented in this country is unacceptable, especially in today's post 9/11 heightened states of alert. We know that we are basically under attack, and our freedoms are constantly under attack by others around the world. So it's unconscionable, in my opinion, to suggest that we have contact with a person and simply say, who are you? Well, I don't want to tell you who. Oh, okay, well, have a nice day. Well, that's not how it works. So we believe that in these contacts, and it's consistent with federal law, it's really nothing new. We've always asked people for identification. And in fact, if people refuse to, we have for many years, long before this Arizona controversy arose, and even long before 9/11, we would book people as John and Jane Doe in the Lee County Jail. I've done that many times, where I've had to arrest a person, that person had no ID and refused to tell me who they were. They are booked into the jail as John Doe or Jane Doe. So this is really nothing new. It is a little.
It seems to be. It doesn't seem like this is a new subject. Why all of a sudden is it becoming? And I saw the Arizona law. It's like, well, like President Obama tried to say, you're putting an onus on people, like they have to prove who they are, and it's like a presumption. There's no presumption. I know when I get pulled over for a traffic stop or for anything, I fully presume that I'm going to have to prove who I am.
I thought you were going to tell me they confuse you for being the sheriff of Lee County, and they give you, with this. I love it.
Hey, there's a new sheriff in town.
That's right. But the reality of it is, of course, identification is critical. Again, in this day and age that we're living in, more now than ever. So we're not asking for anyone to be targeted or profiled. Certainly, all the law is saying is that if law enforcement has occasion to come into contact with these people, traffic stop, domestic violence call, suspicious person being called, any number of reasons we come into contact with the community, that person should be able to confirm for us who they are and dispel our concern or fear as to who they might be or could be.
And, I don't think it has anything to do with that they look like they might be an illegal alien. I mean, I don't know that I necessarily look like I might be an illegal alien, but I fully presume that I'm going to have to prove who I am, and I think that everyone should be, regardless of what you look like.
Sure. Well, we do it in airports every day. We do it for all types of transactions, whether it be business transactions or otherwise. And so identification is it's imperative. It's one of the fundamental things that we need to have in this country, just to make sure that people are who they say they are, that they're not wanted. by the law for some crime that's been committed, that they are not in the country illegally.
You could be wanted in Germany for
Absolutely.
for killing somebody, you know.
Sure.
So we would want to know that.
It typically takes on a Hispanic flavor, but it is not limited by any means to Hispanic. It just happens to be the predominant culture that we're having this issue with. It very well could be European. It could be Canadian. It could be island folks that are here and for whatever reason.
To me, it doesn't matter what you look like. Let's go to the terrorism thing. You know, obviously Al Qaeda has been recruiting American-born people to do damage from within. You know, I could see them recruiting from other countries coming in here, crossing the line illegally because you can get in our borders. Our borders are very porous. We talk about Afghanistan and Pakistan being porous. Our borders, you can walk right in.
Our borders are very porous, and that remains the single biggest problem with this immigration issue. We can throw all types of, sexy phrases for the day at it and debate specific laws or loopholes in laws, but until and if the border is not secured, then all of this is academic.
That's right. We need to secure the borders, figure out who we're dealing with, and then, you know, they can talk about amnesty or this or that, and that's a whole other political juggernaut. We just need to control our borders, and then we'll worry about everything else. Everything else falls in line after that. Now, how do you work with ICE in terms of when you say you have a traffic stop and they're suspected of not being here legally? Or maybe you've got a human trafficking deal where you've got a van full of people and nobody knows who anybody is. So, I mean, how do you guys cooperate? Because I saw the Virginia Attorney General talking about how they do it. They've got some local cooperative agreements. What do we do, just as a basis?
Well, on two fronts, of course, we run the jail. We at the Lee County Sheriff's Office run the jail. So on the jail side of the component, a person is arrested or brought to our jail and may or may not be identified at that point. We're fortunate here locally, geographically, in that ICE is directly across the street from our jail. Every single person booked into our jail that does not have positive identification is run through the ICE system. Out in the road, the other component, of course, of our operation, the road patrol, the day in and day out contacts in the community, same scenario. If we have a traffic stop, let's say, or a van full, whatever the case, and we have one or all that are not specifically identified, we make sure to run them through the federal databases to see, is this person flagged as a foreign-born? In many cases, we've found them where they've been re-entries, illegal re-entries into the country, people that were already here, detected, deported, and now have come back because of what we just said. The border's not there. So we can deport people all, we can deport people all day long. But if we don't have a border to keep them on the other side...
We're talking about recidivism in...
Correct.
In sex crimes, where you have that same, is that the right word?
Recidivism.
Recidivism
right.
With foreigners coming in across our borders.
Correct.
It's just crazy.
It is correct. And recidivism with regard to illegal immigration is no different than recidivism with DUI offenders, with thieves, with drug dealers, with child molesters, or what have you. It means repeat business. And when you talk about career criminals, the question begs, who let it become a career? I mean, you're a businessman, I'm a career law enforcement officer. Who let it become a career that this person is a criminal?
We got about a minute left, but basically, I don't want our criminals on the streets. I certainly don't want criminals from any other countries on the streets. And I certainly don't want terrorist people who we can't identify coming through our borders either. So it just makes sense. We have law enforcement in our country for a reason. We need to have law enforcement of our citizens and any other citizen and border patrol so we control who comes in and out of our borders. I mean, I could get going, but if I walk into Iran, I bet you they have a good border control.
And that's what I was just going to say. To further illustrate your concern and the point that you're making, none of us would be expected to go into any other country, anywhere in the world, and just walk around and integrate into the schools, the hospitals, without identifying ourselves. It's unconscionable.
Treat me, yeah, exactly, for free.
Right.
So, well, you've been watching The Future of Real Estate presented by the Ellis Team at RE/MAX. We come back, we're going to talk about budget and a few other issues, so stay tuned.